Darnell?
Here.
Mr. Carter?
Present.
Mr. Oakley?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman? Ms. Elke?
Thank you, we have a quorum. The purpose,
I said she threw me off for a minute because she wasn't doing it alphabetically.
the purpose of this meeting is rather narrow. I don't anticipate that we are to make a decision about a police chief tonight. So just to start off, that's not what this is about. I wanted to have an opportunity to answer any public or council questions about where we are after Chief Hughes' death and what's happened, what's transpired, just so that we're all on the same page moving forward. And I'd like to get on the same page with a plan to make a plan, right? Now, how are we gonna go about this process to make these important decisions? I have a number of ideas about how that might play out. So I think there's a lot of conversation that we can have. To that end, when I was on scene that horrible morning, it was pretty readily apparent to me that we needed, just logistically, someone that everybody understood should be coordinating the duties of the police chief in everything from how we're shifting emergency services. And I want to give a shout out and a big thank you to the sheriff's office, who even tonight is helping us get through the situation. Thank you very much. But even for coordinating things like that, it's just who should you call, where's the top of this thing, et cetera. So Bob and I discussed it, and I also had a number of very meaningful conversations with Rich these past couple weeks, and I can say that it hadn't been decided to bring it to council, but it was all but decided to bring it to council, that we would be looking at April as the assistant police chief. So there was some vetting and a conversation that had already happened, and we just didn't have, it was cut short. We didn't have a chance to bring that conversation to council. We didn't even really have a chance to finish it, and there was more to do. But on the scene, it made it pretty straightforward to me to say, look, we have a need, we need somebody in this position. There are some other things that maybe are best discussed in a closed session, which I recommend that we have, that are part of some of the decisions that have been made in the conversations that we've been having. But for those reasons, it's not even a real position, an interim police chief. I just needed a name to put on this person that's gonna cover these functions logistically. So I'm calling that the interim police chief. To assuage any confusion, this is a temporary situation, and its sole purpose is to give us time. I didn't want to suddenly show up with a recommendation for a solution to the council. What I want is to take the time to have the conversation, think about the larger context. I want to do this process with you. I want it to be collaborative. And so the point of putting somebody in that place was to give us breathing room so that we can do it. And I wanted to clarify where that was coming from. I do have a regret that I was not more proactive in contacting each of you individually when I found out that Rich passed. I'm very digital. Almost everybody in business and in my world, private and otherwise, is online. So I tend to expect that those things are being communicated, and I know a few folks didn't get as much communication as I would really intend and like. So I'll put some attention on that. But other than that, I'm satisfied and comfortable with the way that we are conducting business right now. I think we are doing reasonably. I'm not noticing that we have some big hole. There's nothing on fire. There's no urgency to anything that's on my list, other than I want to carefully move us forward. questions that are there. I do think that I would recommend that we have a closed session after, I already have on my tentative agenda, which hasn't been posted, to have a closed session because I wanted to give the council, we do have two pieces of litigation that the city's involved in. And I just always, when I was on council, wished we periodically were informed. And I wanted to take time to just do that. It's nothing critical, no action necessary, normative. But I had already asked for Sharon to put a closed session on the agenda for the 14th. But I would like to add, in addition to the legal action that's listed for the Sunshine Law, that we have a personnel issue, and specifically it's to talk about some of the formulation of hiring, how we're going to staff, who we're going to hire, our internal dynamics, and I think some of those conversations are best had in closed session. So in anticipation of a closed session where we can talk in detail about some things, I did want to take, maybe that's all that needs to be said, but if there are questions or if there's more that we need to talk about, I wanted to make sure we had a public place to have that conversation. So with that, I would just turn it over to if there are any conversations about it.
Mayor, have you in the interim had a police department meeting yet with all the officers, all personnel?
I have not, but April has.
I just want to say, I think the way you handled it was very well. I think April will do a wonderful job. Have utmost confidence in April's performance as the interim chief. I think
I'll
it's a
pass
good
it along to
choice.
her.
I've known her a long time. I think she'll do well.
Thanks.
I do have some questions on the rank and file of the structure of the police department. I know decisions have to be made, and sometimes, whether they're mistakes, there's always good intent, and mistakes can be opinionated. Those are some questions I would like to have as far as answered. As far as we know, the city ordinance says there shall be an assistant police chief. Sonny's not here, can't ask him, maybe Bob or Mayor, what is our current structure, rank and file, prior to Chief Hughes passing?
There are a lot of ordinances that are in conflict. And we can sit here all night and talk about them, but
I don't know if this helps. Chief and I talked about this specific thing. And we had several action items in place to help alleviate some of the burden he was carrying. One of which was to get an assistant police chief in place. So, that's something we've been working on.
To me, regardless of conflicting ordinances, that ordinance makes perfect sense to
Yes,
me.
it does.
It just is common sense, like we would have an assistant.
So, but to answer the rank and file question, because if I understand, and you and I had I don't know how to.
Well,
We had a discourse on it in
the reason being a paramilitary organization, regardless any person's, like, it's going to function. There's that line of authority
Well,
that's
there
established.
is, and I would say that, first off, there's precedent both ways of choosing. The question really, and tell me if I'm wrong, the question is, should this have gone straight by fact? Who's the most senior person in place, who has the most seniority,
Right.
position, and rank, right? That person would automatically fall into that position. That is not the way I chose to make this decision. I think that would have been a poor critical choice to make. This is not the military. There are other circumstances. And as recently as a week prior, I asked in this conversation about the potential assistant police chief, Rich reflected to me that these are my equal candidates for that position. So I was actually in the position of looking at 4 options. Handing it over to Bob, which would have been a very reasonable option. Yes, he can. Yeah, there is a conflict of a subordinate of Bob's reporting to me, so the police department reports to the mayor. But if he is that person, he does report to me. And that's one of the things, one of the options I do want to talk about is what the job of the police chief is and how that may look or change or evolve. This is the time to talk about it. But I had 4, to me, all good choices. The choice that I made was based on Rich's recommendation and some other circumstances that are minor but were on my mind. But any of those 4 choices would have been fine. And we are functioning and we're doing well. We had an immediate answer. I think that helps with public concern and the sense of keeping our city operating and knowing who to call and that things are in place, which was my most immediate concern. I mean, on the scene, there were questions. So I understand that there's a rank and seniority conversation to have, but I would suggest that authority flows down that chain, and communication flows down that chain. Communication flows up that chain, but authority does not flow up that chain. Authority flows down the chain, and the top of that chain was me.
And this is an interim situation.
Yes.
This isn't cut in stone.
Right. Which is absolutely not my intent, and it was clearly
Right.
discussed.
Right.
We have an ordinance book, an employee handbook, in different departments, and it tells them how to move those people up in those departments. Why does the police department is an exception?
Because they have their own policy and procedure manual,
As does the
Okay,
fire
well, why
department.
don't we go by that?
as does the fire department.
Why aren't we going by that?
What are we not doing by policy? Is there
You s-
policy about the
You
the
just
loss
said
of
that you picked a person out of 4 people by your choice.
Is that a conflict of a policy you're aware of?
Well, I don't know, I haven't seen the policy.
Well,
I'll
I'm
be happy to
unaware,
provide you with a copy of that manual.
I am unaware of any policy that exists that would dictate this circumstance.
The one thing that stands out though in the handbook is the seniority.
What does it say about seniority?
Well, does it not say that if you have a department head that dismissed, then you pick that one up and seniority is part of your choice?
I'm not aware of
Is
a
that not
policy
true?
that says that.
That's not even
Sometimes
considered?
that's not even a good choice.
It was considered,
Okay,
just as a common sense, it was considered.
if we go back to the beginning, when we first got the new council, Mr. Carter was, if I'm not mistaken, was talking about, or Mr. Polis was talking about raising the police salaries. And we talked about the way the police was structured and what we needed to do to keep police officers here. To me, it would be harmful to the police department if we pass over someone that has the more seniority than a person that you selected. And if we're trying to build the police department, if you have a new officer come and he's wanting to get up here, but if the mayor has the power to come underneath him and collect somebody, do you think?
Don, it doesn't always go by seniority. I've been in departments, Tim's been in departments, when it comes time for a promotion, it may be a lieutenant that gets promoted over a captain to a commander spot. So, and even though that guy may have greater
There's sort of,
longevity.
there's sort of a stratosphere, is the way that is my sense of it from the conversations with Rich. These 3 individuals are in that same area of scope. One has more education, one has a lot more field work, one's had this class of exposure, this one's had that class of exposure. One has this negative, another has another negative. And when I looked at the immediate need to make sure somebody is in place who has access to the information that is emotionally in a situation to do it, that, you know, doesn't have any other things associated with them right now. No controversy, calming, put somebody in place that can handle this until the council can make a permanent decision, which is what's important. This is a temporary decision to cover a workload. And I want the council to make a decision.
You have had the opportunity to look at that, we haven't,
Correct.
and did you not look at the records? And we have not had a chance to look
I
at
didn't
them.
look at, well, I did look at some records, but I directly was engaged in the conversation about these employees when I made this. And the point of those conversations was to get us in a position to have the conversation with council. We were obviously short in that effort. So I recognize we haven't had that access, and I have,
We're not.
which is why I'm suggesting
Yeah, Mayor,
closed session.
it's none, I'll, for the record, I'm somewhat disappointed that a decision was made within 2 hours upon the chief's death. There was no emergency, you know, declared emergency.
I
I mean,
disagree.
this is my opinion, it may not hold any water. The department has rank and file, they're going to operate, and if we needed someone to give that direction until we came to this meeting, you know, we have a city administrator that has that experience. Not knocking April, she may be the best one. The time was my concern, so treat it like it's a critique from me, and it may be worth putting in that trash can, so be it. It's just a displeasure of mine. Not knocking you, tough times, extenuating circumstances, I can understand that. But if Bob leaves tomorrow, the city still go operate. If you leave tomorrow, the city still go operate.
Well, you better believe that if
I
Bob
think-
leaves tomorrow, I'm gonna put somebody in the position as quickly as possible to cover
Right.
the phone calls that are coming in for him.
And-
And on the scene.
And I'm sorry, we have flooding going on, we have so much going on that could really quickly
It needed to be
escalate
done.
into something.
It
We
needed
need
to be done.
somebody
Noted.
in a position.
Noted.
It's all right, the man's been in the ground for 3 or 4 hours now.
I want to say also that as far as seniority is concerned, the top person, and I've worked in a lot of places that and that top person went into a supervisor's position, which is what chief of police is, the supervisor. And they're not cut out, they were fine where they were at, but they are not cut out to be in that leadership position. I have seen it time and time again. And therefore, you don't wanna put that person in there if it's gonna cause problems, and they can't handle the leadership itself. And I still wanna say thank you, and I think it needed to be done expediently. Like you said, we've got a flood, there's just too much going on right now. It could not have waited.
That was my
And
experience.
if April was the supervisor, I was unaware of that. I didn't know she was.
I'm not saying that you didn't have the authority or the power to do that. I'm just saying I don't agree with your choice, whatever that means.
I'm not sure what
I'm not
that
saying
means.
that, you did wrong, I'm just saying, we're sitting here talking about choices, and I'm just agreeing with your choice.
Well, maybe I can prioritize this conversation. The choice has been made, and unless there's some policy that someone wants to point to or some suggestion that we change it from here, the choice is in place. I personally feel really good about the choice and the time in which I made it.
And furthermore, it was very unprofessional and rude for you to say that in an open city council meeting like that.
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Huffman, the thing is, we do have policy in place, it's called rank and file, and it's structured at the fire, or the police
And
department.
it starts with me and
You're right.
following it.
You're right.
So what I want to do is regroup us, because we're getting off track on the
Yes.
topic. We really should, this should be an opportunity for us to examine our real priorities, which should be an opportunity for us to come together as a community to support one another. So if I've made some error, it's just that, an error. I don't see an error in this, but if I have, I apologize. What I really want, and the whole point of doing it, was to facilitate us working together as the local government community to put forth the best solution for our police department going forward. And to that end, I would like to hear a motion that we have a closed session. I mean, I can call it, but I'd like to feel like we have some agreement that we're gonna have conversation about how we wanna structure this in closed session for the July 14th council meeting.
I make a motion that we have a closed session to discuss on the July 14th council meeting.
Do I have a
second
second?
that.
Is there discussion?
Mayor, just for the record, I'm uncomfortable that the city attorney is not present for a closed session.
You're uncomfortable with?
Not having the city attorney present for a closed session.
Next week.
He will be
We're not
here.
gonna have a closed
Next
session.
week.
Oh, I thought you.
Not tonight, next week.
I apologize. You had, I don't even know where we're going with that.
We don't have to, I'm looking for an expression of consensus that this is the purpose of moving forward. So we have a motion, second, is more discussion?
I just want to make a mistake. If I misunderstood something, but I thought when you started this meeting that you wanted input as to what we thought about what you did. Did I misunderstand something?
I'm open to input.
I thought that's what the
I've had this
discussion
input.
was.
I think what I said was if there were questions, but if,
Did I not ask?
did I not let you give
question?
input?
Huh?
This
Did I not
doesn't
let
have
you give
anything to
input?
do with the motion that's on the floor.
Correct. Let's go ahead and,
But I thought we wasn't gonna vote on it, he said, we didn't need a vote.
Now, we're voting on something else. We got a motion.
We're voting on a motion to have a closed session on July 14th.
please call the roll.
Mr. Darnell?
Yes.
Mr. Gay?
Yes.
Ms. Pelkey?
Yay.
Mr. Oakley?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
I would like to do one more thing. Are you done?
I'm done, and I wanted to have immediate clarification, just in case they have any questions about what's transpired. But other
I would
than that,
like to make a motion to formally accept April Epperson as our interim chief.
Motion is on the table, do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Motion made, seconded, discussion. Please call the roll.
Mr. Gay?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Darnell?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Oakley?
No.
Mr. Hoffman? Ms. Pelkey?
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Are there any immediate clarifications?
Yeah, that was quick. I completely missed that vote.
I made a motion to formally accept
April.
April as
Mr. Oakley
interim chief. He
Is
was
said
the
that.
only no.
Police chief.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is the interim police chief.
Yes.
correct.
Are we done?
Yeah. I would
I'll
have
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Fifth.
Call